Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today is another exciting show. Let me tell you why. It is election year. November is right around the corner, and we've been hearing so much. This is a damn good election year. Because let me explain a little bit more on this before we have our guests come on. This is the year of change. And what I mean by that is this is the first time in history. I'm 60 years old. I don't look it. I'm 60 years old. In the 60 years of my life, I prayed for something like this to happen, to where women now have the leadership roles at their disposal. I know what most people are thinking, especially men. Well, I don't want a woman doing this. I don't want a woman doing that. Hold that thought for a minute. It's women that nourishes us, that grooms us, that helps us to make the right choices. Fathers do that, but women play a key role. So if they can play these key roles in development of myself and family and so forth, why not give them a shot at the biggest titles in the world, changing the world? Today, we have a young lady all the way from Henry County, who's actually came through a lot of things and seen a lot of things, great family values, lived her dream, stayed loyal to her state, to her city, to her cause. And I really hope that the viewers really get to know her and understand her purpose, her cause, and her future, not only for herself, but for Indiana and the world. I'd like to welcome to the show, let me rephrase this, Democratic nominee for governor of Indiana, Dr. Jennifer McCormick. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I appreciate it.
You know, it's funny, when we was just talking, you said Jennifer McCormick. I said, look, that DR in front of your name, that means something, and it needs to be respected, period. Before we get deep into the political campaign, tell the viewers a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, so I so appreciate the opportunity and for your listeners to do their homework. I'm a big believer in that we have to be informed, and then we have to go inform others. So our charge this election, as we were so reminded by Michelle Obama, is, to do something. And to do something means be informed, listen and learn, go do something, go inform others, but also get that activity going. I am a fifth generation farm family. I was a teacher, I was a principal, I was a local school superintendent in Delaware County. So I was right between Ball State and Anderson University and had a great experience. I'm also, as you mentioned, I have had great experience being a wife and a mom. Our son is 26 years old. He is a cyber officer in the Army and is now transitioning into civilian world. So his hair is growing out, and it's crazy to see him that way. But I was your last elected state superintendent as well. So I was the 44th state superintendent of public instruction. I was elected in 2016. And since then, I had a choice to either take what I learned, which was the good, bad, and ugly, and just be dismissive, or try to do something with it. So this is my charge, to really try to bring something back to the state of Indiana, because I firmly believe that we deserve a governor we can trust and and who can be transparent and be held accountable. But it's all about people. It's about making sure we're staying focused on people versus playing politics.
When you say the good, the bad, and the ugly, explain that a little bit for the viewers, because I know the viewers aren't naive. There is good, bad, and ugly in politics, but no one has ever come forth to explain, and not in full details, but just an example of what those good and bad things could be and why you felt they need to go for this title as governor.
Yeah, the good parts of it are when I see our General Assembly or our statewide office holders who are fighting for Hoosiers and they're fighting for our kids, or they fight for programs that better assist our communities. That's the good part.
Right.
The bad part is when I see a supermajority, which is very heavy handed, which means a one party rule, when they are ignoring the rules that they have set for a General Assembly. So you don't have a voice. When there's language being brought up that everybody knows is going to harm either a large majority of Hoosiers or pockets of Hoosiers, that's bad. And the ugly is when things go through and they know it is harming individuals and there is no appetite or no willingness to do anything about it. And so there's differing levels at the State House, but it's time we bring back some common sense, and it's time we bring back more of a balance. When you have, just a super majority of one party rule for so long, it just becomes difficult.
You mentioned a couple of things on your political campaign trail that I like to focus on, some things that are really big for you. And one is public education. I myself was a former school teacher as well, history and physical education, K through 8th. I know the importance of education for everyone, no matter the age, whatever. You go back to school, you continuous education is power. But that's one of your main focuses. Give me a little insight on your policies and what you want to see change or happen in the field of education.
Well, first, I want the rhetoric changed. In Indianapolis, we talk about education as an expense, and we're always talking about, it's over half of the state budget and it's super expensive. And absolutely it is. But the rhetoric needs to be it's an investment. And it's not just a K-12 conversation. It's about birth through age 5 before they even hit the doors of K-12. It's a conversation post K-12, but like you mentioned, it's lifelong, right? We need to be committed to the education of Hoosiers throughout from the birth through, we say cradle to grave. We need the whole spectrum. We need to be committed to educating Hoosiers. And we're better when we're educated and healthy, but that education piece, I firmly believe, is the foundation to a democracy. It's the foundation to our future. It's the foundation to stopping the cycle of poverty. It's empowerment of the individual. And I just am a firm believer, if we don't get the education piece right, the rest won't matter.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You mentioned something that I thought was really profound too, based on your experience growing up. You mentioned the downfall or the closing of major plants in Indiana, mainly General Motors. I myself went through that as the fitness director for Daimler Chrysler in Twinsburg, Ohio. And it goes back to two parts. And I liked it when you said the education, because a lot of those workers in there had nothing to fall back on. It's like they didn't invest in themselves, but you saw how a company, a factory can close down and shift not only the community, the state, the city, but individuals' lives. Tell me a little bit about your experience with the closing of General Motors and what you plan to do as governor to stop these things from happening and crippling the economy and crippling families.
Yeah. So having grown up in Newcastle, when I was younger, I was in a community that had really strong unions and had a lot of very high paying jobs and a lot of opportunity for overtime. They had good benefits. They had good pensions. We had a really strong Chrysler that was here. In fact, our high school was called Newcastle Chrysler High School. And so it was the community. And we had Allegheny and Ingersoll and Modern Fold, and we had just so many, and some are still here, Grady's still here, but many of them have left, but they paid well. Now, since then, I've returned back to our family farm in Newcastle, and it's just a very, very different community. And I know we call it the cities of the Rust Belt. I was an athlete. I participated in the North Central Conference. And when you think about that athletic conference for us, it represents what's happened in Muncie and Richmond and Anderson and Marion, it represents some of that, where those unions and our industry used to be strong and really great paying jobs. And then when they leave, it really does completely impact a family and completely impact a community. But you're exactly right. I remember a lot of my friends' dads who had worked there for years, and when it shut down, there was a lot of depression.
Right.
There was a lot of anxiety because they didn't have the transferable skills, even though some were offered, like to get some of those skills. It was like it paralyzed many of our families, and it truly had an impact on not just then, but it still does. And so making sure we have a viable economy in our state, but also too, we got to get Valerie McCray elected, because so much of that is a connection to federal partnerships, and I'm looking forward to getting her there so she and I can get some stuff done.
Speaking of Dr. Val, the Democratic nominee for senator, she stands on a strong platform of mental awareness. We saw a lot of this surface during the pandemic, where people were forced to be confinement, pretty much, where resources were not in place, where housing became an issue thereafter, where the legal system almost penalized individuals for not being able to pay rent, light bills. We've seen this just a couple of months ago, where a affordable housing unit had been flipped so many times, and the tenants were left with no water, no electricity, but still was forced to pay bills. What's your take on that?
On the mental health piece, on the emphasis of that mental health, obviously it's a crisis across the country. As you mentioned, COVID did not help because we were isolated. And many people think, well, that was a great time because families and friends were together. And then there was a lot of this conversation happening. And I will tell you, from what we're seeing, we see a lot of language problems. So even that the youngest of young during that time, you would think that there was a lot of reading of books and talking to each other. But I think what happened was people hunkered down and they were in front of screens.
Right.
And they were working in front of a screen. They were doing their education in front of a screen. And it was so taxing on people, and the unknowns of, life and death, and when am I going to get back to work, and the stressors of, can I pay utility bills? What's that grocery look like? Can I get groceries? What's going to be available? Can I get gas? And it was just really hard. And we probably haven't rebounded at the pace that people thought we would from the mental health place.
Right.
I say it's lasting. It'll have generational impact. And until we start having an honest conversation that it's going to be expensive, we have to quit beating up our healthcare providers, because there are not enough in any of it, but in mental health. Mm-hmm. We do not have the beds necessary if people are in crisis to get them into facilities and get them the treatment they deserve. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very complex. It's very layered, but where's the conversation? I have to give credit to Suzanne Crouch. She prioritized mental health. And so I was glad to see that. Mm-hmm. My disappointment was when I was in office and we were focusing on that, we had no support from anyone in that administration. Right. And so it's easy to have rhetoric, but actions speak louder than words, in my opinion. And I know I think her heart is passionate about it, but it takes that next step of, you have to have action. And that's where I promise to get in. That will be one of our big emphasis. Healthcare is one of our 3 pillars, and in that is obviously mental health.
Indiana is the crossroads of America. We've seen great things happen to this city. We have the pretty much sports capital of the world here. We've had the Super Bowl here. We had tons and tons of things. We have at least 5 of the top major cities to live in: Carmel, Fishers, Westfield, Noblesville. What do we need to do for the inner structure? Because we don't hear much about the inner structure. That's an area that you will probably be more inclined to develop to get more recognition to this particular topic. What's your take on that?
So as far as, if I understand your question correctly, just as far as how are we going to celebrate what's happening in Indianapolis,
Do
or
we
are you
keep
talking
it?
about
How do we keep it? Yeah, how do we keep it growing? I mean, we've done
Got it.
outstanding stuff, but what are you planning to do to make it even more impactful?
Yeah. So really our big concern for any of our communities, we have, over 60 of our 92 counties that are declining in population. And we have to have Indianapolis strong.
Mhm.
We have to have the donuts strong. We have to have Northwest Indiana strong. We have to have Evansville strong. We have to have anchors that are going to Fort Wayne, South Bend. We have to have those anchors to anchor all of us and celebrate that. But it goes back to, we have to fight crime. We have to take measures necessary to make sure people feel safe in their communities, and let's quit playing around with gun violence. We need to have some honest conversations. We also need to address the mental health piece. We need to make sure we have great education across the state and great wages. People want that recreational piece, but here's my concern. When I go outside of Indiana, the perception is becoming the reality, or the reality is causing the perception.
Right.
And either way, it's not good. So people see us as, okay, wait, you're banning books, you're taking over school boards at our most vulnerable areas of the state of Indiana and taking away the voice in those communities. You are going after women's reproductive rights. You are attacking certain populations. You refuse to really pass a good hate crime bill, which is crazy in 2024. There are so many layers to it that outside of Indiana, people are paying attention. We've got to keep people here. We're as good as our Hoosiers. The state is as viable as the people who are here. And we also got to attract others who want to come here, whether they're playing, whether they're working, whether they're getting educated. We've got to be, the place to go, the place to be, the place to become. And I just don't see it happening.
Speaking of, this is a sensitive topic worldwide. And I always tell people social media has a tendency to create a fear-based community. But some things that are appearing on social media is actually becoming reality. One of the big things that we hear in this state is dealing with the police and their interactions with individuals, period. What do you think needs to happen here to make the police department and civilians feel safe, protected, and not have the fear factor set in as the media is portraying it out? Because we know some of this stuff is true. And as the governor, this is probably going to be one of the number one issues that you have to deal with, because we encounter law enforcement every day. And I don't want to ever be afraid of law enforcement.
Yeah. And it goes back to, first of all, I mean, we all understand the power of good law enforcement.
Right.
And I think we do have a lot of good people who are in law enforcement at every level. Are there bad apples? Absolutely. Like in any profession. And those need to be addressed, and they need to be, quickly. I mean, there's no room for that, because it's life and death.
Right.
But the other part of that is, we need to make sure that we are having good partnerships. And far too often, I've heard there's a disconnect from certain levels of, not everywhere, but in certain parts of the state where the cities aren't necessarily talking to the county. And then there's a disconnect with the state police. And, we've got conservation officers who have their unique, we have, different areas of law enforcement that we've got the infrastructure. Now we can talk about, we have a lot of openings. So that adds stressors on law enforcement individuals. When you're supposed to have, X amount, let's say at a small little local, you're supposed to have 30 and you can only staff 20 because of money or because of lack of applicants. But those stressors cause it on both sides. Because if you're highly stressed and you're trying to be a teacher or police officer, your judgment at times reflects that stress. Right. And then you've got people, when you get pulled over, you're hoping like this person is calm and they're not stressed, and they're common sense, and they have good coping skills. So, it goes both ways. The stressors that are being caused on both sides. I know when I watch and I'm like, oh my goodness, I hope whoever shows up at that window is not a hothead, so we've had those moments, but I know too, when you're a law enforcement officer, they're pulling up thinking, I hope this person doesn't shoot me when I ask them to roll down the window. So it's going, both ways. What I see a huge part of this is like coping skills from just society and communities and having the resources we need. We've got some good on the boots community programs that are trying to work on taming down that violence. The first option, and I've been around a lot of kids, and sometimes they're like, I'll just shoot them. And I'm like, why is that your first defense? Like, and so there's a lot of pieces to it. Mental health, the lack of coping skills, the lack of self-awareness, the permanency of all of it, I think is being lost right now. And so just being a good partner, making sure that but we have to also address the gun laws. I mean, that has to be a part of this
conversation. What's your take on that? What's your take on the gun law?
Well, we got to listen to law enforcement.
Not worldwide, but as it relates here.
Sure. In Indiana, I'd have to be realistic because you have to get things done. But the first steps are paying attention to law enforcement who are saying we got to repeal permitless carry. We've got to repeal that. I mean, that has caused nothing but stress on both sides. So we've got to repeal that. The other thing too is why can we not pass some common sense gun violence prevention measures that 80% of Hoosiers say yes. I mean, get weapons of war off the street. Look at a wait time for, someone to buy a gun. Look at safe storage. Look at all of our kids who are younger than 5 who have gotten their hands on a gun and have killed themselves or killed a friend or killed a family member. I mean, it's safe storage and being held responsible. I mean, there are some really common sense measures we can take, but we have to have cooperation from our one party rule. But it'd be great to have some federal help with this. And that's, again, where Dr. Val comes in. I know she's passionate about, she wants, common sense gun violence prevention. We're pushing to hang on to our red flag law. And we've got Mike Braun and Beckwith who are saying they want to do away with it. If they do away with red flag laws, our schools, our hospitals, our workplace get a lot more dangerous. Why would we want that? So there's a lot of room we can improve upon that, but we have to change the leaders. We're not going to change their minds. We have to change the people.
I like the way you said that. Let's go with another topic that came across my social media feed that somebody asked me to ask you is the housing. People came in for housing now. I mean, I don't know if this is a state. I don't know if it's federal. I don't know how we fix this. You're the next coming up governor. How do we fix this?
Yeah, so there are far too many people homeless. There are far too many people, and defining homeless as either on the street, literally, or in a shelter, or they're couch hopping and not just by themselves with a family, or they're trying to find a relative to go live with. I mean, it is pervasive, right? It's everywhere. Yeah. And there are laws to protect those people and there are resources, but getting connected, we've got to work with our local levels to identify those people and try to get them connected to resources that they don't even need. I would say they deserve. They deserve it. Part of it is keeping people in homes that are currently in homes, or keeping them in a rental situation, or if they're a homeowner. And our property tax plan that we released did that by offering some relief to renters and to homeowners. And that could be passed day one. So it's ready to go to offer some of that relief. The other part of this is, if you can't pay your utility bills, I mean, when you're picking utility or rent, and our utility bills have skyrocketed. And so that's the other part of our plan to get those utility costs down. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to being fair in our lending practices, making sure we have renter protections, working with the fair housing agencies that know where those resources are. And I have been the first one to admit, look, I'm not an expert in everything, but we've got people in Indiana who are, and they need to be at the table. And we need to solve problems together. Homelessness, I just know from here and traveling across the state, I go into a lot of libraries to plop down and to work for a couple hours or to make calls. And across the board. There are a lot of people there that are lost. They're hungry. They're homeless. They're cold. They're hot. Their hygiene's not good. They're not healthy, and it's everywhere. So we need to address it.
Why do you think this hasn't been addressed prior? I mean, if I'm driving down the street and if I'm the governor or lieutenant governor, I'm seeing these things. I'm seeing them. It's different if you don't see these things. Why hasn't something been done before now?
It really goes back to, from what I learned in my 4 years at the State House, who are you committed to helping? I'm committed to helping all Hoosiers, not just a small pocket of very wealthy Hoosiers who look like me, who have degrees, who have really nice homes, who, are wealthier people. There are a lot of programs right now who are benefiting a certain pocket of Hoosiers. And then you've got a whole other dynamic of middle class and those who are struggling, who are really not the priority. And it goes back to just the philosophy of leadership. When I was a teacher, when I was a superintendent and a state superintendent, like, my charge was to help everybody. But I also know too, I had special resources for those who needed just a hand up. It's not just about the hand out. We've heard that before, but a hand up. I remember having, it's getting clothes and getting laundry detergent and hooking someone up with a doctor and telling him, like, your child's teeth are killing them. I got to get you into a dentist. And I've made arrangements. They are in pain. But it's a philosophy of, are we going to take care of each other, or are we going to go the avenue of, we're going to take care of you if you are in this pocket of people who I have chosen to take care of?
I can tell you right now, the thing that I like about you and Dr. Val, you come from a nourishing, when you speak, from a concerned parent side. And I like that, because you put yourself in somebody else's shoes, or you've been in somebody else's shoes. Let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about the difference in the Democratic platform for governor versus the Republican platform. What are some of the things that you question about? You don't have to give the names. We know who's running. But what are some of the things that are questionable that could really damage this state from the Republican Party? And what are the things that you guys would do to correct those things, so we don't have collateral damage?
Yeah, perfect. Great question. And the choice is clear. I mean, it is crystal clear. And usually there's a difference, but this is extreme difference. And we always say, and Dr. Val knows this too, the election in 2024 is a decision about Project 2025. So what does that mean at the state level? That means, for me, I am fighting for access to affordable health care for everyone. For them, that means that there is not an emphasis on health care, and they're going to continue to strip away the rights and freedoms about people to make their own decisions about their own bodies. I am very concerned about education. I see it as an investment, and I want to make sure we're taking care of all, but particularly those who are most at risk. My opponents want to defund education and control the curriculum, and also to make sure that we are controlling not just the curriculum, but the freedoms around what we are exposing kids to, particularly literature. With the literary problems, taking books away when we should be saying, let's get 1,000 in before they start school. That's a totally different approach. Also, I am fighting for our unions and good paying jobs. It is time that we have the wages to make sure people can live at a way that they can thrive with their families. They're looking at taking care of those who are the most wealthy. Our property tax plan really did show the difference of, we are trying to take care of Hoosiers, but also the local level. So we're not defunding police, we're not defunding fire, we're not defunding our libraries and our schools. Theirs did completely the opposite. In fact, the chambers came out and said, try again, Senator Braun, that's not good. So the choice is clear. And it's also, let's be honest, it's democracy or not. Right. And that impacts at the federal level and the state level and the local level. It's about a people approach from our team or a political approach from their team. I want to protect our kids and empower our kids and make sure that they have been afforded the same opportunities as many of us.
Mhm.
Their focus is taking care of political agendas, and that doesn't include kids.
We see a lot of immigration policies being questioned and using fear tactics to start hate crimes and so forth, and trying to run a campaign off of the backs of individuals that are trying to come to this country to escape some type of persecution. What's your take on that?
So we know illegal immigration is a concern for everybody. The illegal piece of this needs to be figured out, and so that's a federal issue that I'm happy to be a good cooperative governor with the federal level to say, let's get solutions to illegal immigration. Let's make sure everyone involved is safe, but let's also come up with a way to get people who are here to be legal. Let's get that expedited. Make sure that they can come into our country in a humane and safe way. Indiana, 6% of our population are here legally, and they are our doctors, and they are our teachers, and they are our great restaurants down the road, and they are our farm workers. And, they are such a vital piece of who we are. And I firmly believe, we're better when we're diverse. We're better when we're inclusive. We have so much to learn from each other. But yes, let's fix the illegal immigration concerns, which my opponent voted against twice because of political pressures. But yet we need to go back to, we've got to embrace, we need, our population in Indiana is going down, and we need people here. And to make sure Indiana survives, we should be embracing legal immigrants who come here and want to work here. From what I've heard from people, they're great neighbors. They are great workers. Yeah. They pay, so much into our taxing system that they keep our state viable. It just goes back to me, it's counterproductive to use rhetoric that is divisive and dangerous to say all immigrants are bad. That's just ridiculous.
Before we wrap up, you saw the presidential debate. Everybody saw it. There were questions and answers. Some might say that the vice president avoided certain questions, and some might say that Trump avoided certain questions and answers. That's part of the game, I guess. But my question to you is, you guys are on the Democratic ticket. I think there needs to be a time for change. What do you think needs to happen in this country in order for the Democratic Party to really make a difference worldwide?
Yeah. So we need the first female president of the United States, and we need to have the first female governor of the state of Indiana. We also need to make sure that as a party, we are pushing for organization and inclusivity and making sure that we are looking for the strengths in each other. Too often, what I have seen is some splintering in a party that we don't have room for splintering. We need to refocus and recapture what we're after. We all believe in democracy. Most of us believe in each other. Right. Most of us believe in that diversity, inclusivity, and that we need to, be good stewards and good neighbors and be helpful. And so there's a lot of things that need to happen, but I think a lot of it goes back to leadership. When you have the leadership that matters, things get done. And, you can't lead anybody if you don't have any followers. And you can't follow who you don't want to lead. So it's kind of a chicken and an egg. But once we have the vice president who will become the president, we'll be ready to go.
What can the viewers expect from you once they pull that ballot for you and Dr. McCray moving forward? What is the future with you in office?
Yeah, it's kindness, it's trust, and it's results.
Wow, that's deep. How can the viewers support you, be a part of that? How can they get them out to Portland polls?
Yeah, we love help. We love the help, volunteers and donations. McCormick, and it's McCormick, McCormick 4 FOR, McCormick4gov.com. Go sign up, look at the issues there, come to events. We're getting ready to have a big event with musicians because we're celebrating the arts. And I believe that music brings all of us together. So come help us, be part of the team, be part of history.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Indiana's first female governor, the Democratic nominee, Dr. Jennifer McCormick on the Andre the Beast Crayton show.